25 years next July.
So I have worked at the Cedar Rapids Public Library for 2 years in January.
I have been with the library now 10 years.
I've worked for the Cedar Rapids Public Library for 40 years.
I worked for 37 years.
I was hired as a library materials reference assistant with Storytime. So I worked a little bit in children's programming then, and then transferred to children's programming after that. And now I'm a patron services specialist.
And my job, everything falls under other duties as assigned. So I have primary roles where I take care of the director, the board, but really it's changed a lot over the years. So other duties as assigned would be making sure that the building's punch list is done, managing the maintenance and janitorial. I probably know more about this building than anyone else.
I've been a reference librarian where I looked up information for patrons plus ordered for different parts of the collection. I always ordered for the adult section, and they would divide it up so every librarian would order some books. They would order some forms of media. I've also been a government documents librarian when we were a government document depository. I'm a public service librarian now, meaning I work mostly one-on-one, but I also have done things like teach basic computer classes, ran a job hunting lab, just a variety of things.
I was a reference and materials library assistant when I started, and so I was responsible for assisting patrons and creating story times. And then as time moved on, I became a programming librarian and did story time still and Mother Goose and created programs.
And I'm a patron services specialist, which means that I help people find books. I help them with computer questions. Any issues that come to the floor, I'm usually part of the first line of folks who help people.
Actually, I wasn't looking. I was on maternity leave and was looking through the internet, and there was an ad for an administrative assistant at the library, and that was what I was currently doing. But I had this very deep gut feeling that if I didn't apply, I would regret it for the rest of my life. I mean, this is my library from when I was a kid. I mean, obviously the flooded building, but I loved it so much that I was like, I like my job. I just had a baby, but I have to do this.
I chose here because I think this library is really connected to the needs of the community. It's very much invested in addressing the needs of the people that use the space, and I really enjoy being part of an organization that's plugged into that.
I chose to work there because we were on a tour of the new building, which was a 1985 building at the time. I was working at the Marion Library, and we were invited to go. And as we were wandering through the building, we went upstairs, saw the children's department, and when I saw the stained glass window and the staircase, I just felt that that was my place, that that's where I really wanted to be.
You know, I thought about this, but I really worked in every department. I loved working in programming. I really enjoyed that, and it wasn't the first stop that I had at the library. It was I really enjoyed that, though. I enjoyed putting programs together, going out in the community. We did story times at Bruce Moore. We went to Beaver Park. We had just wonderful programs, and programs that came in, like the Old Creamery Theater would come in and do a picnic theater for us in the summer, which was wonderful. Burger King would bring, burgers and fries in, and then Old Creamery would do a performance. But things like that, working with that, and working with such great colleagues is wonderful. Yeah.
So I'm going to kind of give a cheater answer for cheaters, because I think all of the jobs at the library are really fascinating, and I would love to try any of them. But if I had to pick one, I think the programming team's really cool. I think going into programming would be pretty cool. But I think that everyone at the library has a fascinating job that they bring their unique individual skill sets to. in a way that nobody else could.
I thought our greatest achievement would be maintaining the highest standards. We offer excellent resources, programs, and services despite the major challenges that we had, such as the floods of 2008 and 2016, the derecho, and the COVID-19 pandemic.
I mean, we've achieved a lot in the last 10 years, right? I mean, when I came on, it was we opened LAD in downtown, and at that time, that was the biggest achievement. But that was also within my first year. And, you know, and we've won awards for these buildings, and we've done good things. People wanted to come visit us, but the focus has really shifted from the building, like the physical buildings, to the people and how we impact the community. And so, obviously, the National Medal, the Jerry Klein Community Engagement Prize, I mean, those are really huge when you're thinking about what I started with 10 years ago is these buildings are really cool, but now we're doing cool things with the buildings, if that makes sense.
I miss my Mother Goose on the Loose children because we had so much fun. And I had one child who would sit next to me at the LAD library before the pandemic, and he would just sit next to me and copy the things that I was doing, and I felt like I was making an impact on his life and the other children too. Their faces would just light up while we were doing it.
I think probably one of my favorite memories is when we'd set up the job lab and I had a chance to work one-on-one with a gentleman who had no computer skills at all. And this was a point at which people were having to use computers to start to send in applications, respond to requests for having an interview, questions online from potential employers that you filled out your forms and they would decide whether you were a good match or not. And so I was teaching him how to do basic computer things, cutting and pasting, going from one line to the next, all of that basic stuff. And he applied at lots of different places, but then he came back and told me he'd gotten a job. He was so thrilled, and he actually took the time to write a letter to the director saying how much it had helped him. And he said, I would never have found a job if it wasn't for Nancy. So, I made a difference.
We've had so many, it's difficult to choose just one. How we reinitiated the Read to Dogs program out here at LAD Library is a wonderful story, because years ago there had been a group who brought a dogs program out here, but they decided they couldn't continue to do that. Mm-hmm. But we thought it was such a great program that we tried to get a hold of a national program to come in and do a program here. Despite our best efforts, we couldn't get a hold of one, so we finally talked with Alicia Mangan, the Hiawatha Public Library children's person. They have a Read to Dogs program there. And she got us in contact with the local person here, Kathy Davidson, with Therapy Dogs International. And with our new programming director, Kevin Dalecki, got together with them, and we have a great program now. It is the best attended ongoing program we have at LAD Library. So we just love it.
We've had various time periods where we've had almost no budget. Before I came to the library, a few years previous, they had a year where they had absolutely no budget for magazines, for example, and years where they had basically no budget for materials. Now we have a slightly different problem. We have so many formats that people want things in. You have the DVDs and Blu-rays that are sort of phasing out while streaming becomes more and more important, which means we're having to shift our budget around to handle things in different formats because we still have patrons that don't have internet, for example. And so for them, having our movies streaming is useless.
But the events that interrupted our service were big challenges. Responding to the pandemic meant reorganizing the way the library worked almost entirely. But creating curbside, starting chat services, creating programs that are accessible from home, all of these things are, we adapted to the problems that we had. And sure, it didn't match exactly what we were doing before the pandemic, but it was an offering during a time where a lot of people were vulnerable.
I mean, there's so many different ways. Obviously, we have had a lot of natural disasters, and so every single time that really drives home more about what we do for the community. I mean, obviously, I know we're doing so much with summer reading, our ambassador program, but really when you think about when there's a flood, a fire, a derecho, and how even if we're sort of down and out, we're still thinking about the community and how we can help and make sure that they're getting the resources that they need.
The library makes a difference in the community in a lot of different ways. So I think a really big way, it's the winter season right now, so this is something I'm thinking about, is providing a warm space for people who may not have another one. Providing resources for people who are trying to find housing, they're trying to find a job, they wouldn't be able to apply because they don't have access to technology anywhere else. Another thing that I think is outstanding is the space that we're in right now. This is the teen area. This is a place that we spend a lot of time and effort building connections with the patrons who come in here and use the space to create a place that's safe for them, where they can have support that they may not get at school or at home. I think we make a big impact here for those kids, creating a place that they can feel safe and creating a positive connection with the library.
But I think about back in the 80s when I went to the old Edgewood Library on Edgewood Road, and that's where I got my library card because we lived close by. And then how we moved it to the mall, and it was still a small library, and then we kind of had another space and made it larger. And then at the time of the flood, that was kind of our saving grace, that we had a space there that we could work from and expand from there and build something temporary until we could figure out our new library space downtown. And then building the LAD library, along with building a downtown library, that was such a good move. And I think that in the future, looking at the community needs on the west side especially, that building this new branch out there is going to be a wonderful thing for the people in that community.